Yo, what's good? We're back. New book, The Warrior Ethos by Stephen Presserfield. I'm going to start off with a quote that's at the front of the book just because I actually like this quote for a change. The Spartans do not ask how many are the enemy, but where they are, from Plutarch. So, realistically with this book we're looking at the ethos, the thoughts, the way of life of a modern day warrior. Part 1, Academies of War. Tough mothers. 3 stories from ancient Sparta. A messenger returned to Sparta from a battle. The women clustered around him. To one, the messenger said, "Mother, I bring sad news. Your son was killed facing the enemy." The mother said, "He is my son." "Your other son is alive and unhurt," said the messenger. "He fled from the enemy." The mother said, "He is not my son." A different messenger returned from a battle and was hailed by a Spartan mother. "How fares our country, herald?" The messenger burst into tears. "Mother, I pity you," he said. "All 5 of your sons have been killed facing the enemy." "You fool," said the woman. "I did not ask of my sons. I asked whether Sparta was victorious." "Indeed, mother, our warriors have prevailed." "Then I am happy," said the mother. And she turned and walked home. 2 warriors, brothers, were fleeing from the enemy back toward the city. Their mother happened to be on the road and saw them running toward her. She lifted her skirts above her waist. "Where do you 2 think you're running? Back here from whence you came?" The most famous Spartan mother story is also the shortest. A Spartan mother handed her son his shield as he prepared to march off to battle. She said, "Come back with this or on it." That's a warrior culture. That's the warrior ethos. A Spartan colonel, a man in his 50s, was accused of accepting bribes in an overseas command. When his mother back home learned of this, she wrote him the following letter: "Either quit your thieving or quit breathing." The warrior ethos embodies certain virtues: courage, honor, loyalty, integrity, selfishness, and others, that most warrior societies believed to be inculcated from birth. In Sparta, every newborn boy was brought before the magistrates to be examined for physical hardiness. If a child was judged unfit, he was taken to a wild gorge on Mount Taygetos, the mountain overlooking the city, and left for the wolves. We have no reports of a mother weeping or protesting. Chapter 2, Women First. One scene in my book, Gates of Fire, has elicited more passionate feedback than any other. It's the one where the Spartan king, Leonidas, explains what criteria he employed to select the specific 300 warriors that he chose to march off with him and die defending the pass at Thermopylae. The scene is fiction. There's no evidence that anything like it happened in real life. But something about that moment seems to ring so true that it has produced a torrent of letters and emails. Leonidas picked the men he did, he explains, not for their warrior prowess as individuals or collectively. He could as easily have selected 300 others, or 20 groups of 300 others, and they all would have fought bravely and to the death. That was what Spartans were raised to do. Such an act was the apex to them of warrior honor. But the king didn't pick his 300 champions for that quality. He picked them instead, he says, for the courage of their women. He chose these specific warriors for the strength of their wives and mothers to bear up under their loss. Leonidas knew that to defend Thermopylae was certain death. No force could stand against the overwhelming numbers of the Persian invaders. Leonidas also knew that ultimate victory would be brought about, if indeed it could be brought about, in subsequent battles, fought not by this initial band of defenders, but by the unified armies of the Greek city-states in the coming months and years. What would inspire these latter warriors? What would steel their will to resist and prevent them from offering the tokens of surrender that the Persian king Xerxes demanded of them? Leonidas knew that the 300 Spartans would die. The bigger question was, how would Sparta herself react to their deaths? If Sparta fell, all of Greece would collapse with her. But who would the Spartans themselves look to in the decisive hour? They would look to the women, to the wives and mothers of the fallen. If these women gave away, if they fell to weeping and despair, then all the women of Sparta would give way too. Sparta herself would buckle, with her all of Greece. But the Spartan women didn't break, they didn't give way. The year after Thermopylae, the Greek fleet and army threw back the Persian multitudes at Salamis and Plataea. The West survived then, in no small measure because of her women. The lioness hunts, the alpha female defends the wolf pack. The warrior ethos is not, at bottom, a manifestation only of male aggression or of the masculine will to dominance. Its foundation is society-wide. It rests on the will and resolve of mothers and wives and daughters, and, in no few instances, of female warriors as well, to defend their children, their home soil, and the values of their culture. Chapter 3. East of Eden. Where did the warrior ethos come from? Why would anyone choose this hard, dangerous life? What could be the philosophy behind such a choice? An answer may come from the Garden of Eden, which is an archetypal myth common to many cultures other than our own Judeo-Christian. God sets up Adam and Eve in paradise, where all their needs are met without effort, but he warns them, don't go near that tree at the center of the garden. Of course they do. The mother and father of the human race chose to eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. In other words, they chose to become human. They acquire a quality of consciousness that until now has been the possession of God alone. God kicks them out into the land of Nod, east of Eden. And here is the curse he lays upon Adam and Eve, and by extension the human race forever. Henceforth shalt thou eat thy bread in the sweat of thy face. In other words, from now on you humans have to work for a living. No more picking fruit for free from the trees. From now on you have to hunt. You have to chase wild animals and kill them before they kill you. Adam and Eve became the primitive hunting band. The hunting band became the tribe. And the tribe became the army. The warrior ethos evolved from the primary need of the spear-toting, rock-throwing, animal skin-wearing hunting band, the need to survive. This need could be met only collectively, as a group working in unison. To bind the band together, an ethos evolved, a hunter's ethos. Every warrior virtue proceeds from this: courage, selflessness, love of and loyalty to one's comrades, patience, self-command, the will to endure adversity. It all comes from the hunting band's need to survive. At a deeper level, the warrior ethos recognizes that each of us as well has enemies inside himself. Vices and weaknesses, like envy and greed, laziness, selfishness, the capacity to lie and cheat and do harm to our brothers. The tenets of the warrior ethos, directed inwards, inspire us to contend against and defeat those enemies within our own hearts. Chapter 4. Lord of the Battlefield. Alexander the Great, toward the end of his life, frequently stayed up all night, sacrificing to the god Fear. Why? Because the ancient way of war was characterized by fear. The warrior ethos evolved as a counterpoise to fear. In the era before gunpowder, all killing was of necessity, done hand to hand. For a Greek or Roman warrior to slay his enemy, he had to get so close that there was an equal chance that the enemy's sword or spear would kill him. This produced an ideal of manly virtue, Andreia in Greek, that prized valor and honor as highly as victory. Be brave, my heart, wrote the poet and mercenary Archilochus. Plant your feet and square your shoulders to the enemy. Meet him among the man-killing spears. Hold your ground. In victory, do not brag. In defeat, do not weep. The ancients resisted innovation in warfare because they feared it would rob the struggle of honor. King Aegeus was shown a new catapult which could shoot a killing dart 200 yards. When he saw this, he wept. Alas, he said, valor is no more. So I just saw my camera got all blurry. There we go. Valor is no more. The god who ruled the battlefield was Phobos, fear. Chapter 5. The instinct of self-preservation. Some say that self-preservation is the strongest instinct of all, not only in humans, but in all animal life. Fear of death, the imperative to survive. Nature has implanted this in all living creatures. The warrior ethos evolved to counter the instinct of self-preservation. Against this natural impulse to flee from danger, specifically from an armed and organized human enemy, the warrior ethos enlists 3 other equally innate and powerful human impulses: shame, honor, and love. Chapter 6. Right and Wrong. The concepts of shame and honor and love imply moral judgment, right and wrong, virtues and vices. The natural evolution-spawned instinct of self-preservation becomes viewed within the context of an ethical code, and indicated as wrong, evil, cowardly, and depraved. Its opposite, courage, is judged by the same code and declared to be good, brave, and honorable. The Spartan king, this is a weird name. The Spartan king Agesilaus was once asked what was the supreme warrior virtue, from which all other virtues derived. He replied, contempt for death. Courage in particular, stalwartness in the face of death, must be considered the foremost warrior virtue. A detachment of Romans was cut off in a waterless place. The enemy commander demanded their surrender. The Romans refused. You are surrounded, declared the enemy captain in exasperation. You have neither food nor water. You have no choice but to surrender. The Roman commander replied, no choice? Then have you taken away as well the option to die with honor? The dictionary defines ethos as the moral character, nature, disposition, and customs of a people or culture. Ethos is derived from the same Greek root as ethics. The warrior ethos is a code of conduct, a concept of right and wrong, of virtues and vices. No one is born with the warrior ethos, though many of its tenets appear naturally in young men and women of all cultures. The warrior ethos is taught on the football field in Topeka, in the mountains of the Hindu Kush, on the lion-infested plains of Kenya and Tanzania. Courage is modeled for the youth by fathers and older brothers, by mentors and elders. It is inculcated in almost all cultures by a regimen of training and discipline. This discipline frequently culminates in an ordeal of initiation. The Spartan youth receives his shield. The paratrooper is awarded his wings. The Afghan boy is handed his AK-47. Chapter 7. Tribes, Gangs, and Terrorists. Every honorable convention has its shadow version, a pseudo or evil twin manifestation in which noble principles are practiced, but in a dark side system that turns, means, and ends on their heads. The mafia and criminal gangs live by rigorous and sophisticated codes of loyalty, discipline, and honor. So do terrorist organizations. Does that make them warriors? Do these groups practice the warrior ethos? When is honor not honor? To answer this, we must consider the nature of tribes. What are the social, cultural, and political characteristics of tribes? First, tribes are hostile to all outsiders. This has been true, anthropologists tell us, of virtually all tribes in all parts of the globe and in all eras of history. Tribes are perpetually at war with other tribes. Tribes practice the primacy of honor. Tribes are governed not by the rule of law, but by a code of honor. Nang in Pashto. Tribal codes mandate the obligation of revenge, badal. Any insult to honor must be avenged. Tribes prize loyalty and cohesion. Tribes revere elders and the gods. Tribes resist change. Tribes suppress women. Tribes value the capacity to endure hardship. I don't like the part where they said tribes suppress women, by the way. Just going to throw that out there. Tribes are patient. Time means nothing in the tribal scheme. Tribes will wait out an invading enemy till he tires and goes home. I'm going to make sure the focus is on my face. There we go. You've got the watches, say the Taliban, but we've got the time. Tribes are tied to the land and draw strength from the land. Tribes fight at their best in defense of home soil. Tribes are adaptable. They will take on any shape or coloration temporarily, if it will help them survive in the long run. Tribes will ally with enemy tribes to repel the greater threat of an invader, then go back to killing one another once the invader has been driven out. There is much to admire in these qualities. In fact, a strong case could be made that what the US military attempts to do in training its young men and women is to turn them into a tribe. Certainly, it's not hard to understand why tribes all over the world make such formidable fighting forces. But the tribal mindset possesses two potentially dangerous attributes, which can make its practitioners prey to what we might call shadow tribalism or criminal tribalism, particularly in the modern post- and anti-tribal world. First, tribes exist for themselves alone. An outsider, unless he falls under the obligation of hospitality, is not considered a human being in the same sense that a tribal member is, and is not protected by the same notions of fellow humanity. Tribes are the original us versus them social entity. When this aspect of honor culture is grafted onto a criminal, political, or extremist religious doctrine, read Mafia, Aryan Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, the easy next step is dehumanization and dehumanization and demonization of the enemy. The warrior ethos, on the contrary, mandates respect for the enemy. The foe is granted full honor as a fighting man and defender of his home soil and virtues. From Cyrus through Alexander to the Greeks and Romans, and on down to Rommel and the Africa cause, which some notorious lapses be it said, today's enemy was considered tomorrow's potential friend, and thus granted his full humanity. Second, tribes are, by definition, limited in size, since social bonds are usually of blood or kinship, and thus feel vulnerable at times to bigger or stronger rivals. Tribes live by the siege mentality. They see themselves as surrounded, outnumbered, and ever in peril. Again, read Mob, Prison Gang, Al-Qaeda. The tribal mindset thus has no trouble embracing the concept of asymmetrical warfare and pushing this to its limits, meaning terrorism and beyond. If the enemy is bigger, stronger, and more technologically advanced than we are, says the mob, gang, or terrorist, then we are justified in using any and all methods to strike at him. Criminal and terrorist organizations practice tribe-like codes of honor, but they do not practice the warrior ethos. They are shadow tribes. They are not warriors. In the practice of terror, in fact, the terrorist organization uses the enemy's embrace of the warrior ethos against him. How? By violating the honorable tribal warrior code in the most shocking and extreme manner, i.e., striking civilian targets, using women and children as human shields. The terrorist aim is to outrage and appall the senses of honor of the enemy, that the enemy concludes these people are fiends and madmen, and decides either to yield to the terrorist demands out of fear or fight the terrorist by sinking to his moral level. What would Leonidas think of waterboarding or extraordinary rendition? How would Cyrus the Great look upon the practice of suicide bombing or video beheadings on YouTube? We're in for chapter 8 in our next session, the difference between guilt and shame. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.